Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the breakout session on the future of EU's energy mix. And thank you for actually choosing it. It's one of out of 3 breakout sessions that have been offered to you. I have 5 excellent speakers to make sure that it was a good choice. There is a bit of a dilemma that I have chairing and having the pleasure to chair this session. Firstly, we have an immensely complex topic and only 1 hour and 15 minutes to address it. Actually, right now, even less than that. By the time I'm done speaking, we'll probably have even less time. And this is bad news. The good news, however, is that we have 5 excellent speakers, both to my left and to my right, who are kind enough to agree to share their insights and expertise with you. You have the bios of our panelists in your packet, so I will skip the introduction part. My name is Bartosz Wiśniewski. I'm the research fellow with the Polish Institute of International Affairs in Warsaw. I will act as the timekeeper and hopefully a facilitator of this debate. Thanks once again to all 5 panelists for joining us for this session. And I will go straight to the first speaker, immediately to my right, Deputy Minister for Economy, Madam Antoniszyn-Klik, native of Wroclaw, former Vice Mayor of this town, Vice Governor, apologies, of the whole region. Apologies. Madam, the floor is yours.
Of course, it would be lovely to be the Vice Mayor of the town as well, so nothing...
Predicting the future, perhaps.
You know, let's wait and see. Okay. But it is... we have... I was having, in my preparation, then I was expected to address the question of renewable energy and the role of renewable energy in the energy mix in Europe. Maybe some very short thoughts on the issue, because most of you, I know, and most of you have discussed this issue many times in many circles. So we don't have to go through things which are obvious. I think we should maybe think in the direction of future. So there is a big concern in Europe that, for instance, countries like Poland are not heavily enough investing in renewable energy. On the other hand, Poland is saying a very clear message. Energy has to be affordable. As long as it is affordable, we can industrialize. When we can industrialize, we can give jobs to people. And when we can give jobs to people, it is socially understandable and socially acceptable policy. So renewable energy is, of course, one of answers to our problems in Poland and in Central and Eastern Europe. It means it gives us self-reliance. It gives us energy independence in a small part, but still it gives us energy independence. And it is a democratic way of giving energy. It means energy by the people, because small sources in a very small sources giving local energy, which is very democratic, and this is very close to Polish way of thinking. You have to deal with your problems yourself. You have to solve your problems. So the moment you are able to solve some problems for yourself, it is a good solution. In this case, energy solution. So people are for sure interested in going into renewable energy. On the other hand, if you are forcing renewable energy and therefore you are forcing to import the resources which you are making the renewable energy out from, it's not anymore sustainable policy, not sustainable policy for Poland. So we have to find our own energy mix, and this energy mix will be, of course, in every country different. So we can't expect all countries to unify with one policy and one system of supporting renewable energies. But if we go to the general policy in Europe, Poland has made some very tough stand in last year we didn't accept some of the energy decisions in the European Union. We vetoed them with our position by saying, as long as the solution is not global, there is no sense in committing to too high a degree to renewable energy, because we are getting too expensive. When we are getting too expensive, we are getting not competitive. We are not competitive. We have no future in the global development of economy in the world. So here I come to Irina. We have to find solutions to get a renewable energy promotion a global issue and a global solution. And this is where the challenge lies right now, because if you have an expensive solution, you can't expect countries which are, countries which are having trouble to develop their major industries to join with much zeal and go very strong for it. So if we don't offer solutions which are a mix of support and I see the sign, I will finish, which are a mix of support and somehow, I liked very much what Mr. Pomianowski said about democracy, coaching, some kind of coaching into going into renewable energies, you will never get the solution. So this is the Polish position. It's not only teasing Europe. If we will not go into renewable energies because it's too expensive for us, and we will go into it when the global solution is given, and we know it will never be given, so we will never enter it. No, we really want a global solution, and we want the major stakeholders to say, we want to commit ourselves to a global solution.
Thank you very much. And actually, this offers, I think, a very good bridge, if I may say so, to our next speaker, Madam Florence Mangin. Madam, France is undergoing its own version of energy transition for quite a few years now. Since late last year, you have entered a very heated debate on the future of energy policy in France. Nuclear naturally is at the center of this debate, but so are renewables that Madam Minister has addressed in just a few seconds ago. I was wondering, could you please tell us whether the goal set by President Hollande to move from almost 80% of nuclear in your electricity generation to 50% by 2025, is it sustainable? What does your industry say about this goal, and especially given a very, I would say, intimate relationship between the French government and the French nuclear industry? So what is the position of the industry, and what long-term role will the nuclear power play in the French energy mix? It is going to remain the pillar, but how well will it work with renewables and fossil fuels? 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Bartosz. In order to answer and address your question and the theme of the roundtable, I would like to raise two ideas in order to launch the dialogue. First, there is a great diversity among European countries on the energy mix, and it's a reality which must be respected and protected. At the same time, based on this diversity, which is really a principle of our policy, of our policies, we must. There is a necessity to gain more integrated approach, and the two assertions are not contradictory, and they are the two guidelines of the French government for the time being. So first, the diversity in the national choices for energy mix. As you told, France from the 60s has decided to have a national energy mix based on two criteria, competitiveness and independence. And because of this second criteria, which is maybe the most important, we have decided to develop nuclear energy as a core element of our energy mix. That means that for the time being, not 80, but 75% of our production of electricity comes from nuclear. That means 20% of the final conceptions. But it's a specificity, but at the same time, we still rely on 70% of the consumption on fossil energy, which is an element of fragility and of dependence. That's why the President Hollande and the government have decided to launch a new step at the national level, which we call the energy transition. That means one objective, new objective, and one new method, which is France is important. The new objective is to engage this transition based on two priorities: efficiency and renewable energies. The development of renewable energies, which for us is quite new. And a new method maybe is more important than the objective themselves. It is a democratic and decentralized debate all over the country. And as you know, the historical tradition in France is to make top-down, but this time we have decided to make bottom-up, to have this debate, which has begun last November, which will end in July. And on the basis of this debate, the result of this debate, legislative regulation will be introduced by the government and discussed in the parliament. That's why it's very difficult for me to say what is the result of this debate, because it's in course. But of course, the main topic are efficiency, how to reduce consumption by promoting efficiency. And by the way, it is a question not only in France, but in all European countries, and which kind of technologies, which kind of investment of industrial partnership in order to promote renewable energy. The second point is the necessity for Europe to be more integrated on the basis of the respect of national choices. And I just want to recall that Europe is founded on energy with steel and carbon in 61, and then Euratom Treaty in 67. And we have made many, even if it's recent, we have made many progresses in a more integrated market, at least, with the decision taken by the European Council after 2006, which means it is very recent. And last month, the European Council on the 22nd of May has been devoted nearly entirely on energy and has decided new steps to promote a more common approach. It's a good thing, but I have the feeling and the certainty that it's too low. We have to, it's a voluntarist approach. We have to decide, even if we have diverse national policies, new steps as far as European integration is concerned, on research and development for renewable energy, for storage of electricity, which is, with renewable energy, a real problem. On industrial partnerships, we must be much more integrated, even if the interests of companies can be diverse. And also on promotion of interconnection, even if some progress has been made. So, and of course, the last point is mobilizing investment, because we are facing a need for investment in energy in Europe, which is tremendous. So I think we have to combine the respect for diversity in our national policies, but also the necessity and the urgency to be more integrated as Europe.
Thank you. And speaking of integration, Christian, let me be a little slightly provocative here. During yesterday's session, one of the speakers has asked what is going to happen in the course of the German Energiewende. Is Germany going to replace its nuclear with either South African and American coal or with French nuclear? How do you respond to that? 5 minutes, please.
I will try that, yeah. First, let me thank you for that invitation. So it was a very good opportunity to be here. So unfortunately, I wasn't yesterday at the panel, so my train had a delay. So, but several guests yesterday evening, the reception told me so. That was a topic. Maybe start me quite shortly with a story about the energy transition in Germany. So the short story is Germany decided in the end of 2010 to switch its energy system almost entirely to renewables. And after Fukushima, we decided to do it without nuclear power. So, and directly responding to your question, I think the energy transition in Germany is much more than this nuclear phase out, just a small part. So, and for the energy security thing, I think we can compensate it with other resources like gas or coal, maybe. So, but the much more interesting part is how we can be, how we are be able to improve our efforts to use renewable energy in an economic sensible sense, so to make it really payable, use it in a competition way. So that's the major question I think we need to solve it now. So, but nevertheless, in the long term, I think the energy transition, which has goals for 2050, is the right decision for the industrial state of Germany. I think we will have a lot of benefits from it in the future. But I see the short-term risk as well. So, and there's no other country worldwide with the same circumstances which are doing the same process we are going now to do. But, and therefore we have a kind of trial and error process. So we will make mistakes, of course, and but we will have success in several fields. So I see now a lot of success in the field of innovation. We are going to improve our efforts in research and development, for example, an energy storage system, improving energy efficiency. And I see a lot of cost reduction, for instance, in the wind sector, in the photovoltaic sector. So I see a lot of good impulses. But just to, because you asked to share some insight what's going on in Germany, maybe I can draw attention to two current discussions going on in Germany. One is about the increasing energy prices. So we have a feed-in tariff, and which works in the natural sense quite effective, but now what we can observe, we have too much renewable energy, and we don't have the energy grid systems to bring that power to the place where we need it. So there we have a miscoordination, and we need more efforts to overcome that problem. And the other thing is the shale gas issue, of course, that is an international development which challenge Germany as well, from my opinion. And we need to find, that's my opinion, if you see to the international development, some way to profit from that development. But that's very tricky because the feed-in tariff in Germany has a very paradox effect, because if the prices for fossil fuels go down, assuming the shale gas development will have this results, that renewable energy in Germany will be comparatively more expensive. So the consumer have a higher bill in the end of the month. So that's a problem we need to solve. And yeah, so maybe that's at this point enough. Thanks.
Okay, so shale gas actually appeared without being called by its name, by me, thank you. And if shale gas, then it's Nick Grealy, someone that I think someone who follows shale gas must know Nick. Nick, a very simple question. Who is the European frontrunner when it comes to shale gas these days?
Well, we could all individually be front runners, because shale gas is prevalent. It's abundant on a global basis, as the US EIA said just the other day. Within France, the greatest resource in Europe, and also of oil. And here is a country that has, what, 20% youth unemployment, and yet they are sitting on 4.7 billion barrels of shale oil. Incroyable, mais vrai. Here in Poland, you were the first mover on shale gas in Europe, and you're blowing it. You are blowing it. People are leaving the country people are telling me, I tell this back home in the UK as well, because there it really works, is people tell me from the international oil companies, they say, we're out of here, we're going to a country where the government supports us and we've got regulatory certainty and we're going to be able to keep our profits. See you later, we're going to Argentina. Germany is sitting on a massive amount. Absolutely stunning. And something 3.6 trillion cubic meters, according to the Federal Geological Institute. And in the UK, as I know, just yesterday, my client Quadrilla Resources finally got an investment, and they had a company that everybody was saying was a bunch of chances, is now valued at $1 billion. But going back to local energy, because I think we can agree that local energy is sustainable energy, and it makes us immune to supply shocks and independence and so on and so forth. When natural gas and oil, it's always been something that we've used, but it came from the Caspian or the Nigerian Delta or the Arctic or all these kind of things. We now have the opportunity to have natural gas responsibly sourced under our feet in many parts of Europe. And of course, you know, you have massive balance of payment implications. The European Commission is really getting this. This has been something that's happened in the last 6 months, is that everybody at the Economic Commissioner, the Energy Commissioner, the Industry Commissioner, the Environment Commissioner, even the climate people are getting dragged along into seeing the implications of shale gas economically and politically, not only with our friends to the east, but what has happened in the United States with the sudden emergence of shale oil is promising that North America will be energy independent on a continental basis by as soon as 3 or 4 years from now. With this president, and hopefully the next Madam President, if I can, of the United States, I don't think that we're going to be having too much problem of America withdrawing from the world. But I think at the, I know that this has been discussed at the Council of Ministers, so they're saying, what if in the 2020s somebody will be saying, why is the US Sixth Fleet there in the Middle East protecting oil for the Europeans and for the Chinese? And we have another situation, as in Lebanon in the 1980s, where there'll be some catastrophe for the United States militarily. They'll be out of there. But also, I think the EU is understanding that the United States now has a massive economic advantage, and that Europe will be the only part of the world that is importing energy. Because let's not forget that China has more natural gas than anyone. And as my friend Dieter Helm from Oxford University has noted, that we do not have a climate problem. We have a Chinese coal problem. And if we can get rid of Chinese coal, or substitute it with natural gas over the years by 2040 or something to the levels that we saw in Europe, I'm sorry, in the United States, then we essentially solved this. I'll finish just by saying something. I was at the German Marshall Fund in Brussels about 3 weeks ago, and Commissioner Oettinger said to the Friends of the Earth, he says, what you are asking for is irrelevant. And he says, get real. It's going to be the European Union is going to have 4% of emissions by 2030. we can decarbonize the whole thing, and it won't make a blind bit of difference. And if the Chinese have a transition from coal to natural gas, which they have multiple reasons to do so, then that is going to make it doubly irrelevant. So all we're doing is impoverishing ourselves for what is really what I call is more of a lifestyle choice for the affluent than a way to really deliver a modern society. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much. And thank you for actually echoing what Madam Deputy Minister has said in the very beginning about the need for a global agreement before we commit ourselves to anything substantial. Even though of course there might be some people who'd say that somebody has to set the standard, but this is a question to be addressed perhaps during the Q&A. We are fortunate enough to have a transatlantic session on European energy, and joining us is Adam Wilczewski from Department of Commerce. The US has jumped into our discussion just a few moments ago. The hot topic, and something that has been addressed during our conference yesterday and will be addressed during one of the breakout sessions today, later in the day, is TTIP. And of course, it's on everybody's minds because of the hot topic of the day, which is LNG exports. I know pretty much how the US government works or doesn't work sometimes.
Let me know.
So I will not be asking you about the regulatory process for subsequent LNG terminals and so on and so forth, but please tell us what is at stake, if anything, when it comes to TTIP and US-European energy cooperation.
It's a great question, and thank you for having me on the panel with my distinguished panelists. The TTIP is a huge opportunity, I think, for both of our continents, frankly, to, I think, engage not only in trade and investment, but a regulatory, potentially a regulatory balancing. I think that it's huge opportunities. We really shouldn't comment on it too much at this point in time, I think, but I will say that as it relates to LNG, it's important to note that America currently exports LNG to free trade agreement countries, which is great. And we have special permits as it relates to non-FTA countries like Japan, UK, Germany. So I think that if the TTIP can be negotiated appropriately, there's a huge opportunity, obviously, on the United States side in terms of LNG. That's first, which I think is good for Germany and possibly good for England, because as long as you don't tap it, hopefully you'll buy it. But I do think North Dakota, by the way, is a small example of huge success. North Dakota has the lowest unemployment rate of any state in the country, one of the highest growth rates, much like Lower Silesia, actually. And I didn't give you that. And I think it's important to note because there's a boom there. The Bakken oil fields there, the shale gas fields there are quite important. And there's more yet to come. So that's exciting for us. In terms of an energy revolution, I don't know. We don't see the change of the gas at the price at the pump yet, but I think industry agrees that it's an exciting time. One of the questions I think you posed earlier too was whether or not energy could be a glue that ties our nations together. I think it can. If you think about the European Union and the history of it, the first pillar of the European Union happens to be about energy and coal agreements. And I think that that sends a message that Europe can agree on how to work in terms of energy. And if it can do it once, I think it can do it again. So in terms of how the United States and Europe work together, I think energy can be a potential glue in terms of how it works together. I don't see the U.S. withdrawing despite critics, from the European Union vis-a-vis this age of pivot concept. I think, as Hillary Clinton articulately noted, it's more that the United States and Europe will join together in terms of how it thinks about the age of pivot. And I think that it gets down to what you mentioned, Nick, in terms of China in particular. But I think the bottom line is this. For American businesses, it's important, and I think the EC is getting to this, but I think it's important that the member states of the European Union think about how to create a safe, reliable regulatory regime for investment and consider privatization at a more advanced rate, period. You heard it yesterday. There's a lot of discussion about it yesterday. I realize there's an adverse risk culture, possibly. And I've worked in the Obama administration. I will tell you right now, I understand it, working there, if you understand U.S. politics. But I think it's very important to note some of the frameworks that can be designed that do work. The president's all-the-above strategy to energy is working. Can't argue that it's not. He has created a reliable framework, much like this 2020 plan. Let me give you a stat that might raise some eyebrows, but it's true. This clean energy standards the Obama administration is trying to implement will, by 2035, should, we think, create 80% of our economy will be driven by clean energy, which is significant. Right now, it's only 19% of our economy is civil nuclear. We have an increasing amount of biomass, biogas, cleaner coal technologies, which I think Poland can take advantage of, and creating a framework, a regulatory regime with tax incentives where the private sector can drill and do so in a way that is allows for some mistakes, but I think that it allows for open communication to the public so they understand what they're getting involved in is critical. Right now, the United States has more gas and oil rigs drilling than the world combined. And there's a reason for that, and it's because there's tax incentives that allow that. And those tax incentives do create innovative technologies. It does allow people to take risks. And I was joking with my colleague, I'll just end on this funny note. You know, the Beverly Hillbillies, the TV show? It's about a bunch of guys from Kentucky who drilled oil in their backyard and found gold. And actually, there's a TV show today on Discovery Channel called Backyard Oil Riggers. And it's about guys who are, kind of talk funny, who are drilling in their backyard finding oil. And they're putting together $100,000 allotments of money, which isn't a lot of money in terms of oil drilling. And they're discovering oil in their backyard and reaping the profits. And that's a good thing. I won't get into mineral rights in the European Union yet, but if you think about the energy mix for the long future, I think that there needs to be some radical changes in how Europe thinks about tax incentives, opening up the private sector, possibly mineral rights. And I think all this can be addressed at some level in the TTIP, which is explosive in terms of its opportunity for our economic success.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And actually, thanks for mentioning energy mix in your last sentence, because this is something that is the topic of our panel. There are a few things and threads that are actually raised by all of our panelists, but I would like to turn to Nick for one thing, because you have specifically you basically made a tour around Europe when it comes to shale gas and the approaches. And starting with France, because the French government says basically the skepticism is not so much about shale, it's about the technology to access these deposits. Now, I know that you're following the developments both above the surface and under the surface. And there is a lot of talk about so-called waterless fracking these days. Do you think, and of course the question is whether this technology will get economical to deploy it on an industrial basis and industrial scale. But do you think that this argument that this industry in North America is as dynamic as you have just said, and people are setting up drilling rigs in their backyards, and basically that's just of course funny, but the thing is that it's very highly innovative. And this is something that we sometimes are not acknowledging enough. Do you think that do you see the chance of actually transferring the knowledge about the dynamism of this industry to Europe rather than just gas lands and so on and so forth? I mean, only the bad stories, which of course are there. The question is there, but the thing is that they're manageable. So do you think this coming anytime soon? And what would be the conditions for this technology to actually arrive in Europe? Is it the scale of operations?
It's hard to know where to begin with these multiple questions. I think, now you would expect that somebody who is a consultant of public acceptance will tell you what an awful big problem it is, and there you go, and give me a bunch of money and I'll go slaughter a goat or something and sort it out. I think that it's vastly overestimated in Europe, vastly, for political and economic reasons. There have been a couple of opinion polls. One was in the United States recently by George Mason University, where 50% of people in the United States had not even heard of fracking, which somebody who spent a lot of time seeing commercials while I'm in motel rooms in Pennsylvania and Texas has surprised me. But of the people in the United States, there is still a great amount of public suspicion. The people that got $10,000 an acre, they're not suspicious. They think it's great. But similarly, in Europe, I think other people are unfamiliar with this. And it's also unfamiliar with the speed of all this. Let's not forget that 5, 6 years ago, they were building LNG import terminals in the United States. And now they're planning to export it. It really happened, the public perception issues in the United States, when it moved to an area that hadn't seen hydrocarbon extraction since 100 years ago in Pennsylvania. Everybody thought petrol, gas comes from Texas, comes from Alaska, comes from the Saudis. And it's really funny that it comes under their own feet, and it is local, sustainable energy. I mean, I think perhaps in France, perhaps they could give like an AOC appellation for the pure local energy. You know, it's funny, people will want locally sourced food, but they don't want to have locally sourced energy. Or if they do, they want it to be from a windmill or a solar plant. And the average shale well, you would need several hundred windmills that, of course, are going to be there permanently. Whereas you'd have one shale pad that would disrupt the landscape the size of a football field for 10 square kilometers. And after a year, that would be gone. And all you'd have would be a hole in the ground that money flows out of. Money which we could use for renewable energy that works, energy storage, everybody's talked about. That is the true holy grail. There's two holy grails, China and coal, and energy storage.
Yeah, so this, actually you're referring to natural gas as a bridge fuel, and yes, not just in the traditional sense of the word as an energy source, but also as a source of funding for Energiewende. But this is a question I had to Christian anyway. Before I ask this, Madam Messer, you wanted to address something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, because you raised my adrenaline level with, you know, Poland is blowing it, you know. So I was like, right away, you know, the Pole in me. Like, I got my sword and, you know, I prepared it.
Please, no swords. No swords.
But it is, of course, the legislation is not really, or the environmental legislation is not really well perceived by investors, not well perceived by the Ministry of Economy as well, and like you know, not well perceived by the Ministry of Finance, which is astounding in Polish reality. So there will be changes when it comes to legal issues, but it is not true that this shale gas issue is a dynamic and just coming up thing. During our energy roundtable, we had presentation when America started to work on shale gas. And, you know, your expert said it was 160 years working on the technology, because every fracking is different on a different continent. And it is not easy to access our shale gas, and these investors maybe are not very much attracted by the new law proposal, but they are also very prudent, and they know exactly this technology they are having is not answering right away to this type of shale gas we are having, or this type of geological construction we are having in where our shale gas is. So it will be costly to access the shale gas, so it will take more time. We have a very high density of population, not like in the United States, where you have large parts of the country which are easily accessible. We have European Union law on environment, so it's costly. It's not as easy as it was seen beforehand. So I agree with you. There must be a higher level of support for the investors. But still, if they are for this type of fracking, as I have heard, maybe I'm not right because you are the expert. Tell me I'm not right, and I would be happy I'm not right. There are 2 drilling machines, literally two, in Europe right now available for this year to answer to this kind of geological environment we are having in Poland to achieve some results. And if you have only 2 of them, and you can move them to another place where you have easier access and lower density of population and lighter regulatory regime, like for instance in Ukraine, then you have to think twice where you're putting them. And it is a very difficult question to access easily the shale gas, which is right now here. Polish people are generally very, let's say, very practical in many things. I'm sorry, we are very inventive as well, and it has many different facets. But we are very practical, and when something is too expensive, we seldom do it only for at least the last 20 years, and only for the reason to be right on the issue. Right now, we see shale gas starts to be very expensive, so we have to rethink our approach towards shale gas. So it's not just as simple, we are not getting it, and everybody is smart, and we are stupid, and we are not getting the concept. We simply know there are more obstacles on the way, and and you said also there is. Why do people not understand they like local food and they don't like local energy? Because with this local energy, they will have no local food anymore. Because the high level, I'm sorry, it's what they are understanding. Because this is the message they are getting. Fracking is bad for your environment. I love my, great cheese and wine. We love it as well. So we don't want to endanger it by environment unfriendly technologies, and this is the discussion which is right now going on. This is not, people are not irrational. They are fed by information, and they get their own equation out of it and their own results out of it.
Okay,
so I'm sorry, I answered, also a little bit over the top.
A few points of course, that have been raised between the 2 of you. But I would like to give Madame Mangin maybe, or not, if of course you feel called to the blackboard, it is to say. But France, I'm to be blamed. I took France as an example. Is France really so ideologically opposed to shale gas, or is it really about just the technology? And if the technology proves to have a smaller environmental footprint, B, proves to be economical, C, it turns out that you will need some more fossil fuels, and you would like to be less reliant on imports, then you would be likely to reconsider it? Or are you going to stick to what President Hollande said, that not on my watch will I be interested in actually looking into revoking the ban on hydraulic fracturing?
Thank you very much. No, this debate on shale gas is not at all ideological, and it must not be. There are many economic interests, and we see the development in the US. But in France, people used to be not very sensitive to environment in the past. It has changed. People in France and in Europe, but specifically in France, is much more aware and sensitive to environment. And we in Europe, we faced many difficult problems all these last decades on public health and environment, on many different issues. So we are more prepared on that now. And that's why, because of this question, which is a key question of technologies, I'm not a scientist, I'm only a diplomat, so I don't know quite well, but this question of technology is the key one. There is a great level of uncertainty on the effects on environment of the fracking technologies for the time being. And because of the principe de précaution, And because of the history of difficulties we had in Europe on beef, on many other, we all know these difficult issues, which are in the collective remembrance of people. The position is not skepticism, is as soon as this level of uncertainty remains high, we prefer to give the priority to other renewable technologies on which we have certainties, and we freeze the projects in that field. But it's not. We are skeptical. We have a problem of faith, or we have a problem of. And all the scientific reports, recent one, have not given certainty. The level remains, and even if there are new technologies, they are not yet absolutely sure. Maybe there is also another element of difference between the US and Europe. That is the density. In Europe, we have a high level of density. We have not these vast territories as they exist in the US. And of course, it creates another perception by people on the questions.
Okay, before I open the floor to questions, let me just go back once again to Christian, because it seems to me that, and someone, because you were very elaborate and elegantly stated what is the real aim of Energiewende in Germany, that also it is supposed to be to spur innovation, to drive technology development and so on and so forth. But is it not that Germany is actually, with its hesitation on certain energy drivers, is it not skipping the bridge that I referred to when it comes to natural gas? Is it not, because of course, and we had a discussion about this in Berlin, that Germans are good at setting long-term goals, and 2050 it seems like from now to eternity, especially in such a dynamic environment. But aren't you moving a little bit too fast even now, even though you still have so much time, it seems, that you're skipping this bridge of natural gas and getting stuck with coal, importing coal, and electricity generation from coal is actually surging even as you are phasing out emissions-free nuclear. Does it make sense?
Well, or using resources or energy resources in Germany which might have an impact to environment, it's a very emotional thing. So I think the roots go back to nuclear power using and the Chernobyl and behind. I think that is a very emotional thing in Germany. And we could observe something like the same when we had that discussion about the CCS using in Germany. So, and as I interpret this legal framework now, it's regulated to death. And it's no opportunity now to use it. Or it's very density framework to use it. The question whether we should use shale gas in Germany, you give the right word. We need a kind of bridge energy to make that Energiewende working, or to have some very secure energy form in Germany. So whether that will be shale gas produced in Germany or explored in Germany, I'm not sure. Maybe we can find a solution to profit from that international development. So because you have to integrate that question in front of the final goals for 2050. Do we really need in 2050 a high degree of gas or coal or nuclear power? No, we don't need that. So we expect to have them a very high degree of renewable energies. Therefore, there could only be a bridge function of using gas. And I'm not sure whether before the election takes place, we will have a solution to that. Maybe there will be another discussion after that election, and maybe more rational than now. But it's always a very emotional thing in Germany, and they are very afraid of this environmental impacts. And yeah.
Of course. And actually, I didn't ask a question whether this is an election issue, because it is an election issue. And by the way, 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, E.ON has entered the first contract for natural gas imports with a Canadian company. So first North American gas is actually flowing to Germany. We have a little bit over 20 minutes left, so I would like to open the floor to questions right now. Please raise your hands, identify yourselves with your name and affiliation. Ian Brzezinski will be asking the first question. Please wait for the mic. It's incoming. We can hear you, but just you know.
I'm Ian Brzezinski. I'm a fellow at the Atlantic Council. I want to touch on the LNG relationship between Europe and the United States. Yesterday, John Elkind noted that the Obama administration has approved the second of 2 applications for LNG export licenses to countries without free trade agreements. And of course, in Europe, that's heard as perhaps Europe. The problem, in my view, is that there's no clear articulation of policy guiding the administration's decision-making over those applications that remain, the other 19, 20 or so. So question to Adam would be, what does it mean by public interest? What are the factors that are guiding the administration's decision-making on these applications? And when will it be clear to the Europeans and to others how much LNG will be exported from the United States? To my European colleagues, I'm wondering if you share my concern that there is this ambiguity that makes it hard for you to project how U.S. LNG exports will affect the global market and therefore the access you have to additional or access and ability to import additional LNG. Because that must be a planning factor that you have to take into account.
Excellent. I will collect 2 more questions. A gentleman to... Yes.
Hi, my name is Jesper Peterson. I'm doing a Transatlantic Energy Security Fellowship with the German Marshall Fund. It's sometimes said by analysts in Washington, D.C. that the United States cares or concerns itself more with Europe's reliance on Russian gas than Europe does. And the fact that we've made it so far into this conversation without Russia being mentioned once maybe suggests that they have a case. So I'd love to hear the panelists' thoughts about where Russia factors into Europe's future energy mix and also their assessment of Europe's ability to deal with Russia in general on the energy front.
Thank you very much. And the last question to the gentleman in the second row here, over here.
Thank you. I'm a Canadian ambassador to the EU. Coming from a country that has a huge energy mix from nuclear to renewables to hydro, where I grew up in British Columbia, we see daily some of the issues that are in play here and know how these things are related in pricing and access grids, etc. We sort of follow closely then obviously European developments in the energy area against a backdrop that organizations such as the IEA have said that while renewables are clearly going to be in our future, fossil fuels are going to be around for a long time still to come. And realistically, it's just impossible for European industries to survive just on the basis of renewables. You know, if you pull away all the subsidies that are holding a lot of these renewable industries in place, you'd wonder what was left of a renewable industry for the time being. Between this panel and the one yesterday, there were a number of issues raised, such as energy security, reliability, competitiveness, that are all playing into the mix here. And maybe more for the Europeans on the panel, against the backdrop of initiatives such as the Fuel Quality Directive that's being pushed by Climate Action, I'm wondering whether you think that Brussels has the balance right in all these various competing factors that are in play right now in the energy area.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start with the public interest question posed by Ian Brzezinski. Elusive concept.
Yeah, I know.
But don't you know?
Well, Ian's smiling back there because he knows this question. Something, you know, my boss, the Undersecretary of International Trade, often eloquently defers questions like these to their friends in the Department of Energy, which is what I'll do here, because I think it's, you know, that I'm at the Department of Commerce, Ian. But you know, there is cost, I think, is a factor. I think that's something we read in the papers. I think that's something that we need to think about. And I think, you know, it's important to know there's 19 applications currently before the Department of Energy on this issue, and it's being worked through now. So I have to defer, I think, to the Department of Energy. But I do want to bring up something real briefly. I'm sorry, but I just have to bring this up, the local issue. You know, we've been talking about LNG and coal and fossil fuels, but we're not talking about some of the very simple things we can do at home. And you know, even the American school in Warsaw uses biomass pellets, and they're using way less energy than they thought they would need. They have LEED certified building, they have a windmill that powers batteries, and they have solar power, even, believe it or not, in Warsaw. I'm from Detroit, I can say that with authority. You don't get a lot of sun here. You know, I think all the mixture of that has really lowered the cost for that building. Buildings, the military, the U.S. military now is buying buying renewable energy products. There's an Air Force jet that now flies on renewable energy. All those things matter. I think incentives for advanced vehicles, battery technology. I think it's a big thing in Germany, and I know in Michigan as well, where I'm from. I think all of those things, the all of the above strategy really needs to include those very local things people can do that's outside of just recycling, right? But I think that those are very important, and that's probably the extra 20 rule that Minister of Economy Wiśniewski mentioned, was the fourth 20, which is just stop using so much energy. And I think that there's value in that as well. So I just wanted to make that point for the record, that I think there's a lot to be learned from just the simplest things that each person can do at home, or each construction site can employ to lower costs overall.
Okay, the Russia question I think wasn't addressed to anyone specific, but let me ask Christian to handle it as the first, and perhaps I'll ask Nick to also offer his view on this pertinent issue as an external supplier. Christian, how strong will Russia feature in Europe's energy future, do you think?
Well, the energy dependency of European Union is increasing, and of course we need that connection to Russia, of course, for ensuring energy security. But maybe you should open more the broader picture. So Russia is not the only actor for European Union which could supply energy. So I think from the German point of view, it would be very profitable or beneficial to have as well a look to Desertec, what's coming up in Desertec in the next 20 years maybe. That could be, I'm not sure how they, at what stage they are, and how they are able to give us as well that energy that they promised, and what we expect from that project. So, but an highly diversified energy import mix from the European Union is beneficial for the European Union, of course.
Okay, so it's not the question whether you import, but from where and what. Nick?
Okay, number one, I guess you didn't read the memo. Desertec was cancelled 2 weeks ago. Anyway, Russia. Russia is always going to be an important energy supplier to Europe. I try to tell people that in Russia to stop being so paranoid. They have massive amounts of shale energy, and that includes shale oil, as we now know. And I think that if they realize how much they can have in oil, they will be a bit more flexible on gas. I think too many people confuse as well Gazprom with Russia. There are a lot of other suppliers waiting in the wings in Russia. But obviously, if we have more domestic energy, then in a very cold winter, we are going to be less dependent on them. Right now, what people are saying is we're actually substituting a dependency on Russian coal, on Russian gas for American coal. Because what is happening is that American coal is being displaced, burnt in Europe. They burnt 24% more coal in the United Kingdom last year, and 22% in the energy vendor country, which increased your emissions by 2%. Whereas in the United States, CO2 emissions, and the only major industrial country that didn't sign up to the Kyoto Accord, dropped 3.2%. The United States, if it had signed the Kyoto Accords, would have been the only industrial country that actually met the standards. And that was by the great good luck of shale gas. And there's too many people looking this gift horse in the mouth. And I'll just say very quickly, because there's been two calumnies here, is there, you know, there is absolutely no proof at all of shale gas interfering with water. Any science. There's just from the French Senate the other day, said the exact same thing. I was in London last week. There's John Fortran of Natural Resources Canada, who pointed out that they had fracked 12,000 wells in Canada last year, and said they have never, ever once had a case of proven water contamination. This is crazy. I tell my friends in France, I say, this is crazy. You're getting, you know, the only proof that people have, because in France, luckily, we have people like Laurence Parisot, we have Arnaud Montebourg, we have many people, Michel Rocard, all kind of people now coming out to say, let's at least explore to see what we have. Because I think that is one of the crazy things, what's going on, is perhaps I'm wrong. I always say to my green friends, you're saying it's useless. Well, okay, prove us right. But going back to Russia, we should have some kind of, you know, alternative. But, you know, this is really a worldwide thing. Finally, going to LNG, I have to say in the 2020s, I don't think anybody will be using LNG except the Japanese.
Let me actually throw a firmer line around Russia question. And since you mentioned LNG and Russia, Russia wants to enter the LNG market to a greater degree. Right now, Russia's share on the international LNG market is standing at 3.5%. They want to expand this. The problems, of course, are legal. Gazprom's monopoly on natural gas exports, but these will be overcome as soon as the elite, the Russian elite, sorts this out. What if? Where do you think will this LNG make its way? Is Europe the natural market, or is East Asia the natural market for Russian LNG? And I'm asking this question because Russia has been oftentimes mentioned that one of the problems with delinking oil and gas prices is that the pricing in the hubs is not fluid enough. Would Russian LNG in European hubs actually increase the fluidity and therefore remove one of the arguments against decoupling the prices of oil and gas? I'm moving into some very specific pricing mechanisms, but perhaps you could shed some light on that.
Well, certainly there's a lack of liquidity in Europe, but number one, it won't be provided by Russian LNG because they just cancelled, a la the Desert Tech, the Stockman project last week. They finally listened to reality. Russia has always had this thing that it wanted to hold over Europeans, as saying, okay, you don't want our gas, so we'll sell it to the Chinese. And the Chinese and the Russians have been agreed for about at least 10 years, saying, yes, we're going to have all this gas coming in from Western Siberia, or sorry, Eastern Siberia, except that little thing of price. And they have been able to agree on that. So, and meanwhile, the Chinese have now massive shale gas resources, and you know, it's Russia. If they were smart, they would start investing in generation capacity in Europe, and they should invest in the natural gas vehicles market.
Okay, that's a great piece of advice for the Russian government. We have 5 minutes left.
You know where to find.
Before 5 minutes turns to game over, because I think that's the message on the other side. So we can still accommodate 2 more questions. The gentleman in the very back, please, was the first to raise his hand. Please identify yourself by your name and affiliation.
Tomasz Terlecki, European Climate Foundation. I actually don't worry about the future of European energy mix because that's going to be renewables. And we often tend to forget that we are subsidizing renewables to get them to the scale. And our German colleagues have already got them to the scale, and they are already competing. And the main problems with renewables are administrative barriers in Poland. And bigger problem is European integration. In other words, we will never get renewables to the scale until we have electricity market integrated across Europe. And I wanted to ask panelists on their views, how they see that process going on.
Okay, do I have another question from this side of the room? No? Okay, a lady on my right-hand side, please.
And Roxana, Center for Global Studies, Ukraine. Several days later, German companies E.ON and RWE say that they want to review the contracts, long-term contracts with Russia. So don't you consider that nowadays we are at the beginning of the era of renegotiation of all these contracts in Europe? And my second question I'd like to address to the Madame Florence from France. Several weeks later, there was some report from the Parliament of France, and they say in this report that they have strong advice to conduct evaluation of recoverable deposits in France, and they consider to see the shale gas as an element of energy transition. So are there any possibilities to cancel the ban of shale gas this year in France? Thank you.
Okay, let's begin with perhaps with the renewable questions. The question on renewables, Madam Minister, please.
You know, of course, renewables are important, but I'm sorry, it's not the question of scale. They are not getting more prevalent when the scale is bigger. This is what we know already, because we know how much it costs in Germany to make a huge scale of renewables. We got just several months ago the accounts made by the German government, which were stating that it will cost 1 trillion of euros. And this is a moment when we don't think there is any scale where this will go again with the costs as much down, so it will be an achievable goal. So we have to put renewables really in place. It means they have to be a part, but they can't. We know now we can't afford to make them a dominant way of solving our energy problems. And we haven't got the infrastructure. The infrastructure will be immensely expensive. Really immensely expensive. Not expensive, immensely expensive. To make them our first and only solution and our major solution for our energy problems. So we have to find, especially look at our Polish budget. We are fighting right now to finish our renewable energy law in Poland, and we are not fighting with the renewable energies. We are fighting with the finance minister because he says exactly, you know, it can't be a system which kills our budget. So the bigger the scale, you can't expect the bigger the cost for the budgets. The bigger, because everybody is accounting for renewables only if you make the subsidies big enough. If you, there are investors in Poland right now who are saying, as long as you have no law for renewable energies, and as long as we don't know how much money you put into the system, we stop our investments. So, you know, this is of course right on their side, but it means subsidies are the major driver for this kind of investment, and it means there is not a scale right now. If we look at the German experience, where we come to a point where we stop paying and where we get the results. So we have to find the right place for renewables.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all the panelists. Our time is up. There was a common thread I actually sensed in your last statement and what Christian has been saying and what Florence Mangin has been saying about the need for investment in infrastructure. that we need to incorporate this intermittent, so-called intermittent energy sources within our grid, because otherwise this is not going to work. We need to balance this. We need to think about this holistically. I'm not going to attempt to sum up this discussion. If some questions were not asked, I encourage you to ask them over lunch to our panelists, who I'm sure will be eager to share their expertise further. For now, please join me in thanking them with a round of applause. Thank you.